You're watching France 24. Let's go now live to Ankara in Turkey, where the Russian and Turkish foreign ministers have been meeting today to try and unblock some of the grain exports that are currently blocked in Ukraine because of the war. Let's listen to what the Turkish foreign minister is saying now.
Integrity of Syria, and we also discussed the situation in Libya. In order to establish stability in the country, we need everyone on board. As was in the past, we don't want any competition between countries. We want the country to be prepared for a just, fair, and a transparent election. So in the Caucasus region, we are supporting the 3+3 structure, and we want the normalization of relations. And for that reason, we would like to thank the Russian Federation for their support, especially there could be a possibility to sign a peace agreement between Azerbaijan and Armenia, which would definitely be beneficial for the region. In addition, in terms of bilateral agreements, we discussed challenges before trade and also logistics. And against all odds and against all challenges, we agreed upon increasing bilateral cooperation in the field of trade, in the field of logistics, in the field of energy as well. I mean the Akkuyu nuclear power plant. Our delegations have been in contact yesterday and also before. They will remain in contact. Of course, we will have mutual visits where we continue to elaborate on bilateral and regional issues. Our main goal, our main desire is to establish a permanent peace in Ukraine, and we will be supporting each and every step that we will take towards that goal. So I would like to thank my counterpart, Mr. Lavrov, for his visit. I would like to leave the floor to him. Then we will be answering the questions together. Sergey, welcome again, and you have the floor. Thank you, my dear friend, Mr. Çavuşoğlu, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I would like to thank our friends for hosting this meeting, hosting this event. It has been a very beneficial meeting. This is the third ministerial level meeting we held this year. First, we had a meeting in Antalya, then in Moscow, and now we are holding negotiations in Ankara. Of course, the relations between the two countries has reached a maturity, has reached a level of maturity. We have mutual respect, we have a mutual benefit, which are the foundations of our collaboration. Of course, the engine of the acceleration between of our relations is the dialogue between the leaders of two states. Two leaders actually held 9 phone conversations. Recently, they discussed various international issues and bilateral issues. Right now, between our governments and our organizations, we will have much more negotiations and meetings to come. We have exchanged views and opinions. And one topic is about the 9th edition of the High-Level Cooperation Council. We will cover matters in terms of investments, trade volume. So our trade volume has doubled in this period of the year. It has reached $14 billion, and we actually have a great potential to actually trade using our own currencies. And the use of the mere payment card is something that we definitely desire, which will definitely increase the number of tourists. As you know, in 2021, we broke records In 2020, we broke records. 7 million Russian tourists visited Turkey. And we have also touched upon the strategic projects in the field of energy. We continue building the Akkuyu nuclear power plant, and all of these plans are being implemented in a planned and strategic way. Of course, in terms of international agenda, we focused on the issue of Ukraine. I pointed to the current challenges. There are some problems that are posing a threat to the security of our country, to the security of our borders. So we have had some security concerns, and I gave him information about our military operation that is ongoing in Ukraine. What we are trying to do is to give the minimum amount of damage to civilians, and we are doing our best to protect Russian citizens and nationals in specific areas. And with regards to the delivery of grains and cereals from Russia, the Western countries actually look at this as a catastrophe. But 1% is the share of Russian grain in the international market. So the food crisis, the food security crisis is not actually stemming from this war. So we cannot say that this situation will cause a food crisis. Of course, everyone, if anyone tries to understand, really comprehend what we are trying to say, they can definitely. The efforts of my Turkish counterpart is very important. It is of vital importance. They are doing their best to actually make sure that the vessels and the ships can be removed from ports. In the media, we are portrayed as these vessels, and people in these ships are actually like prisoners in the port. That is definitely not the case. We are constantly opening up humanitarian corridors for the safe passage of people. This is a long corridor, so everyone and every ship, every vessel wishing to use these passageways and corridors can actually transfer load, and they can act whatever way they please. And we have some demining activities as well. A few days ago, Mr. Zelensky says that give us weapons we can use against ships so we can deal with the situation in the region. This is a very clear statement. This is very clear. This clearly shows what they are aiming to do. So starting kicking off, if Ukraine is ready to kick off demining activities, then we are ready for that as well. We are discussing the details of this situation with Turkish defense units as well. So this is a very minor problem, actually. On our side, we don't have any obstacles, any challenges. We are not, the Russian Federation is not creating any obstacle for the passage of ships or vessels. We are not preventing anything. So I would like to thank the Russian authorities for their understanding. So they always portray this, Ukraine or tries to portray this as an irritating issue. So in our meeting, we also discussed the situation in Syria. So under the Astana format, we are working hand in hand, and we are preparing for our next meeting on Syria, which will be held in July in Nur Sultan. So the next meeting under the Astana format will be held in Nur Sultan. And also We had last week in Geneva, we held the meeting of the Constitutional Committee. We discussed that issue today as well. We also talked about how to work in the Southern Caucasus region. As you know, we have a 3+3 format that we have in mind that we are trying to implement. We held the first meeting. Our friends from Georgia weren't able to participate, but our doors are always open. And the second meeting will be held as soon as possible. And soon we will be announcing the date of the meeting. Of course, we touched upon the situation in the Middle East. This is a very complex issue that begs for a solution. And for that, we are doing our best to actively participate in international negotiations. Both countries actually support the direct negotiations and talks between Palestine and Israel, but some forces actually lay down some artificial challenges, obstacles. They want to preserve the current status quo, but this definitely will not yield to a positive outcome. And the situation in Libya, we discussed that as well. Mr. Çavuşoğlu said that we had some differences in opinions. However, we discussed every issue amicably, so we can find common ground. Even though we have difference in opinions, in views, we take into consideration our opinions, we are respectful towards each other, and we are able to find a common ground in our bilateral relations. And our goal is to further improve the collaboration between the two countries. This is also for the benefit of the people of Russia and the people of Turkey. This is our determination. And with regards to ensuring the security in the Black Sea, both countries have very important responsibilities. Here we have to completely obey the Montreux Trade Agreement. As you know, the Black Sea Economic Cooperation is actually celebrating its 30th anniversary this year, and we want this cooperation organization to work towards reaching a positive outcome. Thank you very much, my colleague.
More questions. Two from each side. The first question is for, yes please, from Bengü Türk TV, Ecem Hanım.
Ecem Toplar, Bengi Türk Televizyonu.
Ecem Toplar, as you have also discussed the food crisis, with regards to opening of a grain corridor, what is the current level and what kind of a coordination you have with Turkey? And you mentioned the leaders' meetings. So the meeting between President Erdogan, Zelensky, and Putin, do we have an agenda for that? So my question would be for the both ministers. Thank you. As I mentioned previously, for the delivery of grains from Ukraine, Russia did its best. Every day we are opening up grains corridors, and we ensure the safety and security of the ships and vessels that go out of the port, and we are doing that hand in hand with the Turkish authorities. So I'm underlining this once again. Please take a look at Zelensky's statements. Categorically, he's talking, he was actually previously, he opposed the demining efforts. He told that he wasn't interested in such an activity. So the ball is on their court right now. We are not the ones to blame. The topics that we discussed yesterday and today, we are determined to implement them. And with regards to the meeting to be held in Istanbul, this is under the initiative of the United Nations. This could be a beneficial initiative, but to be frank, this will be a symbolic step. So this could be for show. For this to be solved concretely, Ukraine should actually clear its coast from mines so that ships and vessels can leave ports in a safe and secure way. So a possible meeting between Putin and Zelensky. Zelensky wants meetings for just the sake of a meeting, and he constantly changes his attitude and his approach. So he wants the Russian military units to be withdrawn from the country. So this is his only condition for holding a meeting. So he constantly comes and goes. He constantly changes his opinions and views. This is what we encounter every day. He changes his ideas on a daily basis. As I said, for 2 months, the ball has been on the court of Ukraine. So since April, they constantly change their views and opinions. In Istanbul, they gave us a promise to take the necessary steps for the issues that we agreed upon. So in the middle of April, we delivered them our own written draft that included our requests, but we haven't received any feedback from them. We didn't receive any response from them. So the public opinion knows about the targets of our military operation. Thank you very much for your question. So the food crisis in the world is a real one. This is a real crisis. And this is not only about the products to be exported from Ukraine. We should be talking about the grains and fertilizers to be exported from Ukraine and Russia. Sergey actually started on a Latin America tour, and we know that Latin American countries have been very anxious about this issue. So the products produced and exported from Ukraine and Russia combined actually form 1/3 of the global grain production. So this is very important. So in terms of the UN's plan, with regards to the safe delivery of ships and vessels, we need to make sure that you say that you need to make sure that ships and vessels leaving the ports of Ukraine do not have any weapons on them. So we need to have a mechanism in place that can surveil, that can audit this situation. So we need a mechanism where you are involved, the UN is involved, and the Ukraine is involved, which can actually eliminate and lift the challenges and obstacles before the export of these materials, and this will actually also alleviate security concerns. So we definitely need a constructive cooperation. With regards to the negotiations, Zelensky said that they want to go back to negotiations, and our president also noted that he wanted to get back together to discuss with Mr. Putin. So with regards to going back to negotiations, we think that there's a much more positive atmosphere, as we can see from the field. Of course, if both parties want to get together, we will definitely be doing our part to take on a facilitating role, as we did in Antalya and as we did in Istanbul. So we will do our best to kickstart negotiations once again. And as President Erdogan said to both leaders, Turkey is also ready to host a tripartite meeting that will host the leaders of three countries. So from the beginning, we have an objective and an unbiased approach, which includes the implementation of the Montreux Trades Agreement. So I think that I believe in a negotiation, I believe in a solution that will end with a ceasefire.
From Russia today, please.
Добрый день, меня зовут Илья Петренко, телеканал RT.
Hello,
Вопрос будет к
Ilya
обоим
Petrenko
участникам
from
конференции.
RT TV channel. My question will be posed to both ministers. So recently, we see that the rhetorics and the statements of Kiev is actually irritating and getting some attention, some negative reaction from some partners. And they are asking things that are not very easy to implement, and they are actually very rough and impolite. This is definitely not diplomacy. So when you have meetings with your partners, do you actually sense this impoliteness that you see from Russia? So, in my opinion, I have actually interpreted these statements from Kiev. Of course, sometimes I'm not very much diplomatic myself, but the important thing is not how you say it, but what you are saying. Sometimes saying they have the audacity, they feel that they have the courage to say impolite things about heads of state, but it's always better to be kind and act with grace. We said that since the beginning of the war, Turkey had an objective and an unbiased stance. We are not taking steps to make Ukraine or Russia happy. Some of the decisions that we take actually bothered Russia. Some of the decisions that we took bothered Ukraine. For example, the fact that we weren't on board with sanctions actually bothered Ukraine. But what we are trying to do is to have a balanced and an objective and an unbiased approach. And since we have a facilitating role, we need to have such a balanced approach.
Eleştiren açıklamalarımızda ortada bunlar gizli, saklı değil. Sonuçta hangi ülke ne söylüyor
And
hareket edecek değiliz.
so,
Herhangi bir yanlışlık gördüğümüz zaman bundan
if we see a mistake, if we see something wrong, we definitely express them clearly. So, in such a tense environment, it is definitely important to act in common sense, in prudence, rather than acting in an emotional way. Thank you.
Turkish from Betül Usta from Sabah.
Betül Usta Sabah gazetesi.
Betül Usta from Sabah newspaper. As you said, last week you had the 8th edition of the meetings of the Constitutional Council, and next week there will be a meeting in Astana. On the other hand, there's a systematic increase from the terrorist attacks from the north of Syria. So, what is your opinion of Turkey's legitimate security actions? And as you know, a memorandum of understanding was signed after the operation of a Peace Spring. Did you discuss that issue as well? Thank you very much. As I highlighted in my speech previously, unfortunately, the 8th meeting of the Constitutional Council did not reach to a conclusion. Our ambassador and our deputy minister were also present, and they held meetings with their Russian counterparts. Of course, we want these negotiations to go on. We will be participating to the Astana meeting with the same approach. So the Astana platform is actually gave us the opportunity to talk about this. So we are actually giving great support to the UN. However, there's a regime that is not actually that does not want a political solution.
temas içinde olan ülkelerin de bizim
Uh,
üzerimizdeki etkisini bu anlamda
and that is
kullanmasında fayda var.
why it is important that other partner countries should get on board. Maybe we can increase our influence, but the only solution is a political one. I'm not talking about terrorists, I'm not talking about terrorist organizations. The regime should be able to sit on the table and definitely support to a moderate solution. And we always say that we support the territorial integrity of Syria. And there are terrorist organizations who are actually posing a threat to the territorial integrity of Syria, and they are also posing a threat to our own border security. And these terrorist organizations should be eliminated. And some countries are actually openly supporting these terrorist organizations, and this is the reason why we are opposing the membership of Sweden and Finland to NATO. And all of these issues, of course, were delivered to them, submitted to them in a written document. We have concerns. And as you said, we have a common statement with the US. And 5 days later, we signed a memorandum of understanding. And we read that statement, shared with the public opinion together with Sergey. But with regard to the elimination of the terrorist organizations in this region, both Russia and the US has made some commitments, and as Turkey, we want those commitments to be realized. And it is not possible for us to actually tolerate these attacks. And all of these matters, of course, were discussed today in our bilateral meetings.
Last question is
Вопрос был
from
ко мне тоже
Izvestia.
адресован. Вопрос мне тоже был адресован, как я понял.
Please go on.
Я сказал, что вопрос мне тоже был адресован, поэтому я тоже воспользуюсь.
As far as I'm not mistaken, I would like to avail myself of this opportunity to answer this question. So a few words on my side with regards to your question. For many times, we have discussed the issue of Syria. Of course, in 2019, a memorandum of understanding was signed in Syria with regards to eliminating the terrorist threat in the Idlib region, which was a separate document. But all the goals and all the articles written in these memoranda are shared with the public opinion. And we also understand and take into consideration the sensitivities of Turkey with regards to the security threats that they are facing in their borders. The United States is actually feeding these organizations in Syria. We know that. You all know very well that we have faced such threats at our borders as well. So we will continue to collaborate on the Syrian issue. Of course, the activities of the Constitutional Council is going very slow. However, the delegation that is representing our government was there present, and we had the delegation also representing the opposing party, and these activities could have been much more constructive. But our Western partners, our partners from the United States, said that, they stated that, they said the Assad regime, they said that while the Assad regime was running the country, we will never lift the sanctions that we are implementing. They said that. There are great socioeconomic problems in the region, and the international community is actually exacerbating the conditions there rather than trying to find a solution. However, the sovereignty and the territorial integrity of Syria should be established. And the United Nations Security Council has also a resolution about this issue. There was a resolution adopted by the Security Council last year. What needs to be done was to establish a social superstructure and an infrastructure. However, nothing was done. And nothing has been done. The international community should be much more active. And the United Nations should support such such events, such activities that will be implemented by the international community. The United States is actually suffocating the regime in Syria, so no one can actually help Syria out. The next question will be from Izvitsya. My question would be to Mr. Lavrov. In Ukraine, when we asked Ukraine, when will you be demining the ports, Ukraine said that if the Russian operations do that, then we will be doing some things. Can we give a guarantee not to do that? If not, why? The head of the state, Putin, actually delivered a statement about this. So our goal is to make sure that these corridors, these passageways are actually safe and secure. So if Ukraine eliminates the mines there, we will definitely not misuse the operation, and we will take all the necessary steps to deliver safety and security.
Конечно, мы же не на Украине, мы же в Турции, в свободной стране.
Mikrofonu verelim. Sergey soru daha almayı kabul etti.
Суспільне телебачення України, общественне телевидение України, мене звати Муслим Умеров. У мене такой вопрос.
Muslim Emirim from Ukraine TV. Now, can you repeat the question, please? So, aside from the grains products, what did Russia stole from Ukraine? What did they sell in the markets? Your statements, your rhetorics are the same. We have clear intentions, we have clear goals. We want the country to be liberated, freed from a neo-Nazi regime. So with regard to grains, there is no obstacle or challenge posed by the Russian Federation. For that to happen, Mr. Zelensky needs to give an instruction so that a foreign port, so that Ukrainian ports can become safe. Thank you.
This is France 24, and you've just been listening to that press conference from the Russian and Turkish foreign ministers.